Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Nicky Campbell, your call. Is Britain the most tolerant country on earth? Can you think of a more tolerant one? A place you'd rather live in terms of tolerance? Funny word, tolerance, though, isn't it? Nearly 88,000 racist incidents were recorded in Britain's schools between 2007 and 2011. We're talking to a mum this morning who had to take her daughter out of a school because of the abuse she was getting.
She'd have things shouted at her from afar. She'd have people push past her and pull her scarf off. She'd have people just generally just being really rude to her and not thinking that she was part of the school.
No one would claim racism is right, but are we really that bad when compared with the rest of the world? We don't ban people from wearing burqas. In France, the full veil is outlawed. You can open a gay bar in the UK. Homosexuality is illegal in around 50 countries across the world. Try opening a Christian church in Saudi Arabia or having an open prayer meeting there. Are we beating ourselves up when we're more inclusive than most other places on the planet? Is Britain actually the most tolerant country on earth? Or not, as the case may be. Call us right now, 0500 909 693. You can text 85058. So where is a more tolerant country than this one? Or, well, we've got a long way to go maybe in terms of tolerance. Maybe there are other places in the world where the sort of incidents we've been talking about in schools this morning would not happen. We shall see. What do you think? Lord Ousley, I'm delighted to say he's with us, former chairman of the Commission for Racial Equality, founding chairman of Kick It Out, the campaign against racism in football. Lord Ousley, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Nicky.
Yeah, we got Maximus in Worcester, Ruth in Derbyshire, John in Haverfordwest, Jimmy in Middlesbrough. Good geographical spread. Morning, everybody. Ruth, what happened to your daughter?
Well, Nicky, we've had anti-Semitism all the way through our education, starting at primary school on a number of occasions, culminated in the chap from our county coming in to speak to the school about their...
Don't mention the school. We don't want to get into that sort of hot water. How does this anti-Semitism manifested itself for you?
Well, it started off at primary school. It manifested itself last year. We had to take our daughter out of a reputable school in Derbyshire, which we'd actually moved to the area to get her in. She'd had a number of anti-Semitic remarks, culminating in a really serious one, which the police got involved with.
Give me one of the milder ones, which will cause maybe not so much offence.
Don't touch her, she's dirty, she's a Jew.
Oh dear, that's a mild one.
That was at primary school. It finished up on the school coach where she's a Jew, shouting across the bus. She couldn't get off the bus because obviously, it was... And the police got involved. The children admitted what they'd done. The school failed to deal with it, and eventually we had to take her out of the school. That was the sixth occasion that she'd had anti-Semitism. When we finally went to see the head teacher, he knew nothing about our daughter.
You should have gone the minute it happened the first time.
Oh, we did. Every single time it happened, we went to primary school, we went to the school, every single time. The head teacher knew nothing about it, but... They buried it. The prejudice-related bullying forms in our case, out of 5, 1 had been completed.
Well, this is exactly the sort of thing we've been talking about this morning. Stay there. Maximus is in Worcester. Hello, Maximus.
Hello, Nicky.
Right. Is this a tolerant country?
Yeah, I think so. Warts and all. I mean, obviously it's not a perfect country. That's two different debates. If we're talking about a perfect country, then no. But yeah, it's a tolerant country. It tries to create an environment of absolute fair play. And what we've got to, remember, that's a very tall order to ask. But the will is there in the first place. The fact that we're having this conversation now and debating about this issue is testament. Now, if you, I can't think of another country that actually tries to address these issues. I can't think of another country that have actually put laws into place to try and iron out these issues. So, in a nutshell, it's definitely a tolerant country. It tries to do what it perceives to be the right thing to do. It doesn't, kind of just sort of, turn a blind eye to it.
What's your background?
I'm a black chap. I'm an engineer. And I was born and bred in this country. I'm now 49 years of age, so I've gone through the complete spectrum of racism. I know what racism is.
You've had it, yeah.
I'm not that I've had it. I still have it. I see it on a daily basis. So, I think I'm in a good, sort of situation to comment on this. What I will also say is the thing of it is racism is a very hard thing to stamp out. You can only try and do the best you can, but just the mere fact that I can't think of another country that actually even bothers to address the issue.
Well, that's interesting. That's really Lord Ousley. You've been addressing the issue for years, and your work has been recognised for that very fact. Is there a better country if you're gay, if you're part of a racist minority, if you're a practicing Muslim? So many Muslim friends say there's no better country than this one. And actually, to be a Muslim, certainly they said that pre-Arab Spring. Lord Ousley, is there a more tolerant nation on earth? And if so, where is it?
That's a very challenging question.
That's what we do. Is there more?
I think there are comparable places in the world where living is.
Go on.
I think. As on a par with Britain, there are places like Canada, there's Norway, there are other Scandinavian countries. But
Norway's. We've been hearing about a growing racism in Norway.
Well, we're hearing about growing racism in many countries. That's not to say that they haven't attempted to do the sort of things we're talking about, of educating people, accommodating refugees, having legislation and tackling these problems. But part of the question you're asking today is how tolerant we are. And I think, as Maximus said, he was born here, he's black, he's had to put up with all sorts of things, and is still putting up with it, but he believes the country is a tolerant one, and that we have made lots of efforts, put a lot of time into trying to make our society work with its diversity, and it's probably the most diverse country in the world, and places like London are the most diverse capital city that you'll find in the world, and the amount of effort that goes into from people of all backgrounds trying to make it work is a tribute to those people, but also contributes to the way in which we try to use the word you're using today, tolerate each other.
It's a funny word, isn't it?
That in itself doesn't mean to say that we treat people fairly, or we treat people equally, or that we like those people that we put up with, we tolerate.
But is there a better country in the world? Is there a better country in the world to be gay?
Well, I think, from my perspective, there are very few places in the world that I would necessarily want to go and live if it has the sort of diversity that we have.
Yeah.
And I'm very clear about that. I'm very proud of being part of this country.
So is that something we should celebrate more of? Well, let's bring in John in, because John makes an interesting point. You've mentioned London. John, I think you want to make that point about London. We're not just talking about one Britain here, are we, John?
No, I think I've got a couple of points, if I may. One is the general issue of racism as we're perceiving it, generally in terms of colour, perhaps religion. And I'd say, London, of course, I'm from London originally. Now I live in the backwaters of Wales. I can tell you that once you get into the backwaters of Britain, there is less tolerance. And I hear comments, I don't hear the N-word, but I hear inappropriate use of words for black and Asian people that I thought had died in the 70s, to be honest. And the second point I'd like to make is, and more pertinent, actually, for someone that's English living in Wales. If you want to see intolerance, see the intolerance of a decent proportion of the Welsh towards the English. It's actually quite alarming. And it doesn't just manifest itself in just the sporting comments and the banter. It manifests itself in the use of the Welsh language in this country as a nationalist tool rather than a nationalist pride. It's something that is used prejudiced against people in Wales who don't actually speak Welsh.
Tell us an example. Give us an example of it, John.
I'll give you an example. I'm a primary school teacher who lives in London and is now forced to work away from home in London again and travel every other weekend and holidays back to Pembrokeshire, 300 miles away, because jobs here want you to speak Welsh. But the problem is they're trying to push bilingualism in Wales. But the fact of the matter is I think it's only about 10%. I might have that percentage wrong, but it's about that ballpark of people that actually speak it. They're forcing the language and bilingualism, which we know that's not the definition of bilingualism. Bilingualism is when you learn a language as you're growing up and you speak it in your house. This is not the case in Wales, yet they are making that the criteria, not just for teaching, although that's obviously pertinent to myself, but they're doing this in council jobs where everything's got to be printed in Welsh. It is ludicrous.
An unexpected perspective. Listen, stay there. Jimmy in Middlesbrough, is there a more tolerant country in the world, Jimmy?
Well, I do think it's the most tolerant country in the world to people who come to visit, come to live here. They helped in every single way you could imagine, everything from interpreters and all the rest of it. But I think your first caller on, who was talking about the kids at school calling their daughter a Jew and stuff like that, hopefully them kids will grow out of it. It's just young ones how they carry on. You know, if you're different, you'll get called. Doesn't matter what you are.
Those children were 15. Those children
were 15 the older ones we have to bother about.
My daughter.
You had a chap on about.
Did you say there's other things to worry about?
There's somebody else was talking on the line there.
I know, I didn't hear your last bit. Did you say there are more important things to worry about?
Yeah, there's more important in so much as the chap mentioned intolerance. Well, how intolerant was that family who just murdered that girl because she was wanting to wear Western clothes and stuff like that?
Well, listen, that's an ongoing court case, and that's you're in very great danger of being prejudicial there because they absolutely deny the couple that you're referring to that they murdered their daughter, and the jury has yet to come to a verdict on that. Ruth, go on.
Those children that racially abused my daughter that culminated in her leaving the school weren't, were 14, 15-year-old children. They weren't babies. It's about education, Nikki. When we took our daughter out of the school, well, prior to that, the school said, what do you want us to do to try and help? We said, diversity, let's educate them. They hadn't had a diversity assembly for many years at that school. What they say is we send the children every year, the whole of a certain year, go to the Holocaust Museum in Nottingham. And that's their job done. They think, well, we've done our bit, we'll leave it at that. We do live in a society where different parts of the country have different forms of tolerance. And I'm from London originally, I'm from Hertfordshire, and I strongly believe that there are different areas that have the tolerance, and there's areas that I live in now, which is in Derbyshire, where there's no tolerance. It's not only to Jewish people, it's to black people, it's to Asian people, it's to homosexuals, gay people, anybody that is slightly different. The school knew what these children had done, and they completely buried it. And in fact, one of the boys that racially abused my daughter on not just one occasion, on a number of occasions, was told, well, we'll take him out of her tutor group. But take him out of her tutor group, we'll let him have two friends with him. He can take two friends with him because we don't want him to look upon it as a punishment.
Well, this tells us that maybe it is the tip of the iceberg. Just how tolerant are we? But, again, Lord Ousley, you said it's a challenging question when we ask, is there a better nation on earth to live if you're part of Holland? Who said Holland?
That was John in Pembrokeshire.
Some would say the rise of Geert Wilders and his party.
But the point is, you talk about tolerance, right? Britain, someone mentioned laws, and I think that's very pertinent. Right? Yes, we are pushing laws probably better than most countries, but if we have to push the laws, then doesn't that just prove then that we're forcing tolerance on people rather than them taking ownership of it? I mean, if you go to Holland, I used to DJ, and when I used to go over to Holland, I used to love going to that country. Why? Because of the people. I mean, it's an awfully boring place to look at, but the people there are fantastic, and you will not find a more tolerant bunch. Yeah, I'm sure you're going to get extremes wherever you go, but I tell you what, I'm sorry, but Britain may well be forcing laws on people, but I don't think people are buying into it.
But what's interesting as well is that Geert Wilders, as however it is pronounced, and the rise of the Freedom Party is they see it as a protection of tolerance and a protection, a reaction against intolerance, but then some would argue it has, in so doing that, become in itself very intolerant. It's a really interesting phenomenon. 919, we're going to speak to somebody from UKIP who says we're the most tolerant nation on earth in a minute. 919, what do you think, though?
Your call.
We've got Air, and we've got Jay in Air. I nearly said Air and Jay. And we're also Ivy in Blackgowrie. And Peter in Sheffield. We'll be speaking to my Ain folk in a minute. First of all, though, Stuart Agnew, UKIP MEP for the Eastern region. How tolerant in this... Good morning, Mr Agnew.
Good morning. Yes, hello.
How tolerant is this country?
Well, when I first heard the question, I thought, yes, we are the most tolerant country on earth. When I just thought about it for a little bit, I thought you could perhaps split this into the two T's. We're tolerant of trendy things, but we're less tolerant of traditional things. So what I would put in the trendy bracket, we're tolerant to the use of soft drugs, whereas many countries, well, you can actually be executed for being involved in a drug trade.
Would you prefer
to all
that?
sorts of sexual practices. We're quite tolerant to that.
What do you mean? What sexual practices are we tolerant of?
All of them. I mean, there used to be, if you go back to Oscar Wilde's time, homosexuality in this country was actually illegal, was very frowned upon, but we're quite tolerant of all of that now. Quite tolerant.
Is that a good thing?
Do I think it's a good thing to be tolerant of? So it's up to the individual. I'm a libertarian. If they would like to behave in that way, it's their right, as far as I'm concerned. And we are quite tolerant of that.
Behave in that way?
Well, if you behave in a homosexual way, we're tolerant of it. We don't mind at all in this country, whereas in some countries, it's really, really frowned upon, as it used to be in this country, but we've become very tolerant. It's just not an issue. We're tolerant of drugs. I think I've just said that, haven't I? Yes, I have. And we're very tolerant about accommodating the aspirations of immigrants. I mean, we almost bend over backwards to make sure that people can build mosques and synagogues, etc. We will do what we can to help them. And somebody talked earlier about translators and interpreters. We do really try hard to help people in that way. But where I think we're becoming intolerant is of some of our traditional things. For instance, somebody going and having a smoke in a pub, that's now illegal. It's just not tolerated. And I think to myself, well, why can't somebody go to a pub where the landlord is a free house? Shouldn't it be his decision? Shouldn't they be able to do that? But it's no longer tolerated.
Passive smoke, the smoke that wafts from somebody's cigarette is pretty intolerant as well, isn't it?
Well, why not have a smoking area?
Right. You're bringing some interesting angles to this.
Why not give people a choice? But it's not tolerated, full stop.
Right.
Christian traditions, it seems fine to be very careful not to upset the sensitivities of people of other religions, but when it comes to Christianity, they can be the butt of jokes, the clergy, etc. But woe betide you if you step over the line.
But that's a strength, isn't it? That's come through the Western Christian, Judeo-Christian tradition of, we take the mickey in this country. That's a great, take the mickey out of ourselves. Yeah,
we do. Yes, you're right.
You don't think we can anymore? No.
We take the mickey out of the Christian religion, but woe betide anyone to take it out of any other religion. Then they really are on shaky ground.
Right.
That's the difference I want to make.
Okay.
Then there's the if anyone in this country dares to challenge the orthodoxy on man-made global warming, they simply aren't tolerated.
You're bringing them all in now. Okay, right.
They're written off as flat earthers and deniers.
Right.
That point of view just isn't tolerated at all. Although maybe it's beginning to change. A number of years ago, anyone who said we should keep the pound was not tolerated.
So, interesting raft of things about which we're intolerant there. Stay there. Peter in Sheffield, what do you want to say this morning, Peter?
Hello, Nicky. Well, it's just in a way, a bit stealing my thunder a bit, actually, at that point. I was wanting to make nonsense of the word tolerance, because the question you started off with about at the beginning of the programme infers that we're very intolerant to racism. And I think the issue for us is that because we're a liberal democracy, we've got a lot of people, somebody earlier mentioned diversity, we have a lot of people with very, very different beliefs. And going back to 300 years when liberal democracies began, the whole ideal was that with people with very diverse beliefs can all live together, harmoniously. And the problem we've got, I think the reason that tolerance has come in is that we're trying to respect very different, diverse beliefs. But the problem with liberal democracy is because of so many different beliefs, we have a problem in defining the common good for society.
And the inherent irreconcilable nature of it all.
Exactly. Yes. This is a problem. So we really favour individualism. It's a very high value, as the libertarian has just said. But there's very that very individualism creates inequality, and yet equality is another profound commitment to liberal democracy, and the two can't coexist. And
so is one example then gay rights, for example. So we have all the equality legislation for gay rights, and yet we have, or society has become, and there are examples of this, rather intolerant of people who fall foul of that. I mean, they're breaking the law, for example. There have been notable examples, and also of religions which openly say, it is wrong to be gay. So is that an example of what you're talking about?
I think, but there's many. There are many examples.
There are
many examples. Yes, you're quite sex obsessed this morning, Nicky. But we,
as ever.
I think the rise of Islamic fundamentalism, for instance, has served to highlight the very intolerant side of our society. And the thing is,
how's that? In what way?
Well, because you've got MPs who are pushing for 92 days imprisonment without trial, and of course, you naturally start to suspect Asian people with Muslim beliefs as potential terrorists, because that's where the majority of the fundamentalism comes from. So you've got a problem there as well. So because we've got this impossibility to rely on a common good, then the only thing we can rely on, therefore, are laws which prohibit certain actions. And the society, paradoxically, it's like our shadow side comes out. We become the very thing that we hate, which is intolerance. We start to become intolerant. And I think the word intolerance or tolerance is a very poor word to use, because I think what we have to be able to do is to think much more about what is the good of society. Now, I'm coming from a Christian perspective myself.
Whoever said one person's good for society is another person's evil for society. This is the problem.
But we have to be able to debate it calmly. And I think the problem with laws that prohibit behaviour with very extreme sanctions stop you debating in an honest way. So, for instance, if I'm scared of difference, and I'm scared of, let's say, I've got friends who are Asian Muslims, but if I'm scared of a Muslim intimidation, because I think there's a lot of intimidation in Islam, and I want to be able to talk about that in an open and honest way.
You're Islamophobic.
But you're scared of talking about it because you may become accused and you may fall foul of the law. So this is the contradiction within our society, but I think
so. We've got this kind of thought police thing going on here, have we?
Yes, but I think we have to respect one another's different views at the same time. We've got to be able to listen and understand where people are coming from. So I'm bringing some deep philosophical points.
No, you've made a lot of sense to a lot of people. Thank you very much. Let's get Jay on. Jay, what would you like to say?
Hi, Nicky. Well, before I go on to say what I was going to say, there is no utopian system of perfect tolerance and harmony. However, what I would, for example, this country's had problems with racism. Country I'm in right now, Scotland, has problems with sectarianism, non-tolerance to Catholics and things like that. But putting that aside...
well, you can't put it aside. Well, it's a massive problem.
Because these things... Now, you're talking to someone who's got a real... I'm not Catholic by any means, but I think it's a disgrace the kind of way Catholics were treated in this country, and kind of still are. However, but we have to be relative to the world we are in at the moment. Racism goes on. I'm Asian. Racism still happens. There is no utopia. So that's why we have to put this aside for 1 second, Nicky. Let's look at China. Let's look at India. India is a disgrace, the way it treats its people.
And the way China treats its Muslims as well.
Yes, and the way India treats its own minorities, like the Sikh population. Let's look at the greatest democracy in the world, so-called America. Let's not even go there, you know? That's just a disgrace. That's just a basket case when it comes to tolerance. There's inherent xenophobia rife in that country. The way it's treated its blacks over the years, and still probably does. Still does, actually. You know, you get a black president and suddenly this Tea Party crops up out of nowhere.
So are we top of a very dubious league?
No. Because you're looking at it, Nicky, from a point of perfect utopia. There is no perfect utopia.
No, but there's relativism, isn't there?
Well, no, I wouldn't say we're dubious at all, because I'm just going to move on to this point.
Very quickly, we've got to move on. Very quickly, go on.
We're a little bit too tolerant in this country, but me, from my point of view, I would say Scotland, from my experience, is even more tolerant than England. I was in Preston train station with my kids, and we were being racially abused by a group of idiots who were singing EDL songs and everything else. Now, you know yourself, Nicky, that just wouldn't happen here in Glasgow, you know. Glasgow, Ayr, Edinburgh, you know, they'd be chased away. Yeah.
Jay, thank you very much for your call. Very much appreciated. 9:32. More to come. And we want your thoughts. You know, are we beat ourselves up, we analyse, we look at our own problems, but given the global situation, is there a more tolerant country? That word again, tolerance. If you are a religious, racial, ethnic, sexual minority, is there a better country on earth to live than this one? How tolerant are we? Are we the most tolerant on earth? We've got Steve in Bristol, Ivy in Blairgowrie, Roger in Wakefield, Phil in Manchester, and also the journalist Oliver Cam. Hello, Oliver.
Good morning, Nicky.
Hello. Roger, what would you like to say?
I was just saying to your researcher earlier, I've been to a lot of countries in Europe, and I've been to America, I've been to Canada, I've been to Pakistan, and despite all the ills England has in terms of racism, my children still get racially abused. My youngest is 4, and I still have people drive past them. Well, I say people, but, you know, animals, in fact, drive past, open the windows, stop the car, shout, you effing packy B words, and then drive off to little children, which is, you know, abhorrent. But England still is the greatest country to live in. I've been to Pakistan, I've been to Canada, I've been to the United States. This is the greatest country by far, and I will defend that with my dying breath, that this is the greatest country to live in. However, there is probably a 20% of white people in this country who are absolutely, you know, unaccepting of people who are of colour, of a different religion. We always talk about Islamic fundamentalism. Nobody speaks about Christian fundamentalism. Nobody talks about, of what we have to go through in this country as minority members of this country.
But thinking about the fact that, you know, if somebody gave you £1 million and you can move anywhere in the world, would you stay here?
If you give me £1 million, I'll go to Spain. If I'm quite honest, I mean, I've been to Spain 10, 15 times, Nicky, and
is that because of the tolerance or the sunshine?
Yeah, you know, and it's both. Honestly, God, it's both. I've been to Spain, you know, and even if you don't know language, if you attempt to speak their language, they give you a lot of credit.
They love you.
You know, us as Brits, we go anywhere. You look at our empire, we go to anywhere in the country, and we have to have it English. We are totally unaccepting of other cultures, and we want to have it English or we want to have it British. And the empire speaks volumes of what this country is like. But still, like I said, despite all that, I would still live in England than any other country in the world.
Well, there we are.
I would move to Spain.
Oliver Cam, a great Brit with a great vote of confidence for this country in many ways. Oliver.
Yes, I've got a lot of sympathy with what the gentleman says. I think that countries, not specifically Great Britain, but countries like Great Britain, founded on the values of the Enlightenment, whether it be the European Enlightenment or the Anglo-Scottish American Enlightenment, have encapsulated certain values of tolerance and liberal political rights that, however imperfectly we realise them, and I'm certainly not being complacent about the very sobering news story you have about racist incidents, however imperfect we realise them, it is a very good time in British history and in European and world history to be a minority being able to live your life without let and hindrance rather than being targeted. And I can give you a couple of examples. The issue of racial prejudice. I don't minimise this problem whatsoever, but when I was growing up, there were television sitcoms that were founded on the idea of ethnic stereotypes. You couldn't have that now. Within the last half century, conversely, homosexuality has gone from being a criminal offence to where we are now, where there's a serious prospect of same-sex marriage being instituted, a cause that my newspaper, The Times, strongly supports. And these are quite fundamental shifts in social mores that I do think underline that we are broadly a tolerant society.
And getting more tolerant. Nikki Clark, disability rights campaigner. Hi, Nikki.
Hello.
He says we're getting more tolerant. Do you agree?
No, I disagree. I mean, obviously I'm talking from the perspective of the disability that we live with our children, and also my mum, who had Alzheimer's before she died. So over the 10 years that disability's been in our life, I've noticed that whilst people had a lack of awareness, they were quite happy to be educated, and once they were educated, they did better when they knew better. What I've seen is a rise in bullying and a reduction in tolerance, and when you think that a society should be judged by its treatment of its most vulnerable members, and yet disabled people are the scapegoats of the day, you have to ask yourself whether our society, in terms of its tolerance, is suffering as a direct result of the austerity that we're all living under.
Oliver?
I'm not quite sure I follow the argument. There are financial constraints in economic policy, and I don't doubt at all that there's a great deal of misunderstanding and discrimination against people suffering from disabilities. But I'm not certain that affects my argument that over the long term, Britain has become, in most respects, a more tolerant society. There is one respect in which I think I should temper my conclusion, which is that the idea that one should temper the exercise of speech in order not to cause offence, that has become quite a fundamental part of public discourse, and I think that's a mistake. I think that intolerance of unpopular speech has been rising, and that's a problem.
Well, I would say that if you think about it in terms of the media, tolerance for offensive speak, where you're branding disabled people as cheats and liars and scum.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're referring to. I'm sure you're right, but I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Sort of tabloid language, Nikki, is it?
Yeah, I'm talking about the myth that's being perpetrated, and the fact that most people you speak to would say that the vast majority of people who claim benefits, for example, for disability, are faking, are cheating, are perpetrating a fraud on the system. And in actual fact, there's more money lost through admin error at the DWP, for example, than is lost in fraudulent claims. And what I'm trying to say is, in terms of language, it's permeating through the media down into society, and it's enabling bullying attitudes to make their way to the doors of disabled people. And I think...
And this is good. You really think this is getting worse? It was much better 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
I felt so, yeah. I mean, I felt that we were much more of a tolerant society. There are always going to be problems. You're always going to have bigots and bullies, but essentially the vast majority of people didn't feel that way.
But there was this big row recently about various celebrities using the M word, for example, and you've been at the forefront of that, Nikki, and have done I think we've made great strides in that area, because would people have made a fuss about that 10, 15 years ago?
I don't think it would be occurring 10, 15 years ago. I think what's happened is that we've had a sort of systemic enabling of people to become much more able to target specific groups, and I think that's something that we should all of us be concerned about. And I think especially in the case of disability, because these are the most vulnerable people in society, and we have to start asking ourselves serious questions as to how we treat other people, and the lack of compassion. I mean, austerity is the death of compassion, in my view.
Oliver?
I don't recognise that argument at all, for a start. I think that compassion is quite a separate virtue from tolerance. I can feel compassion to someone in my personal life, but I think if government starts to attempt to institute compassion rather than tolerance, there's no limit to the incursions on personal liberty that they can undertake. That's my point about being intolerant of unpopular speech. People do get hurt by speech that is offensive, and you might want, as a gesture of compassion, to put curbs on that speech, but that's not the role of government at all. I think what your guest is commenting on is the economic constraint and the way the government, starting with Tony Blair's in 1997, I remember the attempts to tighten up criteria for disability benefit very well from that time, the way the governments have tried to reform the welfare state. But the premise that they're acting on is not that there's something wrong with being with suffering from a disability. It is that there are some who are claiming it who ought to be eligible for certain other types.
Nicky makes an interesting point about sort of some of the language used by some of the newspapers might be seeping into thought. But let me just move on from that a minute, because I know, but perhaps not. But Oliver, you make the point about hate speech. Maybe we should be more tolerant of hate speech. So if somebody has a banner saying, I parody slightly, behead those who say Islam is violent, or whatever, those poppy burners, we should just let them get on with it.
No, I think that there is, I know exactly what you're referring to, these extremist theocratic demonstrations that deliberately go out of their way to insult mourners and others. No, I think that's a public order offence, and I don't think there's any reason that people should be able to picket processions and
okay. So if somebody has
people like that,
if somebody has a banner, for example, like the Danish embassy, after the cartoon affair, saying "behead those who insult Islam," should we just let them get on with it?
No, we should shut that demonstration down as a public order offence. But I don't think that people should be prosecuted for expressing hateful views.
So when the EDL march, should we stop them marching?
Yeah, because it's a public order threat.
Right. Okay.
But I think the problem is that oftentimes when you raise the issue of compassion, people immediately default to their own personal liberty and their own ability to express their views. And I think what we have to... just 1 second. What we have to do is identify the fact that freedom of speech wasn't fought in... people didn't die for the right to gain freedom of speech so that they could simply perpetrate a myth, a stereotypical myth, and enable hate speech to propagate. We have to understand the difference, and we all have to take responsibility as a society for the decisions that we make that affect other people. And so I do believe there is a correlation between austerity and the death of compassion, and I do believe that we need to, all of us, start looking outside of our own austerity bubble from the point of view and perspective of fear, and realise that our neighbours and our friends and people that we don't even know are being affected, and we need to do more to help them.
OK, thank you both very much indeed. It's 9:49.
Your call.
Good morning to Paul in Cheltenham and Rob in Stamford. Hello.
Good morning.
Thank you for hanging on. Paul, what would you like to say this morning on your call?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo some of your callers' thoughts about how tolerant we actually are in this country. Unfortunately, not everybody gets to travel abroad. I recently was doing some work in South Carolina, and this chap was continually using the N-word, and it started to...
So who was he? What sort of guy was he?
Ordinary, white, middle class, very well educated, works for a big company that is here and in the States. And, just...
So not some, to use a pejorative term, not some redneck.
No, he's not a redneck, not a neo-Nazi, didn't have tattoos on his knuckles or anything. Smart guy. But he was using the N-word, and I said to him, look, mate, I said, I don't want to be, a wuss here, but I do actually find that really offensive. And he looked me in the eye, and without any sense of comedy or irony, he actually said to me, well, what do you call them? And I said, what do you mean, what do I call them? I said, humans or by their first name? And I was gobsmacked, and but it just brought home to me that how tolerant we are here, and that people in other countries, it is actually ingrained within them to feel that they are superior to other people, to other humans on the planet.
What an extraordinary reaction.
And I thought to myself, well, yeah, sometimes you hear, I don't know, Daily Mail readers or whatever, going on, banging on about, the whole country's going to hell and it'll all be Sharia law but we don't take them seriously, do we? We look at them, we think, oh, well, you're being stupid.
Some people take them seriously.
Well, okay. Yeah.
Can I just come in there, Nicky?
Of course you can.
I think sometimes, Rob from Stamford, I think sometimes people do look into things a bit too seriously. I mean, I'm a black chap, and I echo what the black chap said earlier in regards to, yes, there is racism in this country. I feel I've got a very, very good sense of humour. I'm born and bred in the UK. I've tapped into the UK sense of humour. And I think sometimes if people use their humour, it would make things a lot easier. And I'll give you an example. The current racism row in football at the moment with allegedly John Terry and Ferdinand.
Thanks for that, allegedly.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. If we actually look into, if John Terry did actually say what he said, okay, and he addressed somebody by calling him black, what does that mean?
Well, what's the relevance of it?
Well, yeah, what's relevance? Because the last time I looked, Anton Ferdinand is black.
So you're saying it's merely accurate? But what's the relevance of that? But it's used as an insult.
Well, is it though? Is it though?
Rabbi Jonathan Romain, what do you think? Listening to that, are we too po-faced?
Well, no. Sometimes.
Well, let's bring Jonathan in on this, Rob. I'll let you come back. Go on, Jonathan.
Well, sometimes it's actually hard to know what people want. In other words, you can call... We talk about black churches, and that's a respectful name for certain types of evangelical churches. Whereas if you talk a black person, then, well, okay, actually they're a person. They happen to be black or they happen to be tall. Correct. So, are you using that in a descriptive way or an abusive way?
So if you use the black and followed by the C word, which is the most offensive? But surely the whole package together is vile, isn't it?
Yes, and but I would agree with a former speaker on the programme who said that by and large we're a pretty tolerant society, and I say that as someone who's Jewish and who's been at the butt end of certain anti-Semitic remarks every now and then. And yes, of course, they're always unpleasant and they should always be condemned, whether it's anti-Semitism, anti-racism, anti-homophobia. And I have a sort of nasty suspicion that's almost inevitable, and it's almost part of human nature that, people dislike anyone who's a little bit different and unlike. That's not to condone it in the slightest, but just to say, unfortunately, it's almost a gut reaction.
Well, it's in-group, out-group stuff, isn't it? But we want... Go on, Rob.
But I'm going back to the parents who have been on your show this morning, etc.
Yeah.
I mean, a bit of parenting wouldn't go amiss. If somebody has come home and says, well, I'm being picked on and I'm being called this, well, a bit of parenting in regards to, well, stand up and say, rise above it.
Well, we're talking about kids at school. Let's bring Ron in Oxfordshire. What do you want to say?
Yeah, good morning. I think that the discussion here is very enlightening, but I think that the points that are being raised, there is a lot of religious intolerance. We have seen many examples of Islam, and I can speak about Islam because I've lived and worked in Saudi Arabia. The two extremes of far-right Christians and the Islamic world are so far removed from what we're discussing here, but they raise points that the intolerance of Islam towards Christians.
In Saudi Arabia, for example, what was that like in Saudi Arabia?
It was an incredible, because you just, obviously, as you know, it's a secular society, and it revolves around prayer time.
Well, you say this is important, I think. You say the intolerance of Islam towards Christians. Don't you mean the intolerance of the Saudi version of Islam?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, right. Yes, indeed. I make that point.
There should be no compulsion in religion, it says in the Quran. Yeah.
Well, going in Saudi Arabia, where your life revolves around prayer time 5 times a day, and everything shuts. And if you are walking around, you can't wear shorts, and that's entirely. You get the religious police coming up to you and telling you.
If you sang in the street with a guitar and sang, "Dear Lord and Father of mankind, forgive our foolish ways," what would happen to you?
Your feet wouldn't touch the ground. If the religious police from a tower was to hear that, you would then be arrested.
Leave your tambourine at home. Okay.
Leave your tambourine at home. I think that coming back to here, we should stop beating ourselves up.
Yeah.
I think that the Islamic community, and it's a broad brush.
Communities, yeah.
I think we should be. The two extremes have got to come towards the middle and accept that their form of is just not acceptable.
Well,
we know the cases in the paper.
Jonathan Romain, in the last 30 seconds, is this the most tolerant country on earth?
I'm very glad I'm living in England. I mean, if you think about it, we've got a recession, we've got high unemployment, and look at the extremist parties. Elsewhere in Europe, they're riding high in the polls. In this country, BNP, EDL, all the others, they haven't got a single seat, and they've been wiped out in the council elections. Probably this is one of the better countries in the world to live in. Lots of hiccups, but much better than most others.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Rob. Thank you all. Victoria is coming next with what sounds like an absolutely fascinating programme. Keep it on 5 Live.